Welcome to another edition of Counterpunch, the show that exposes the unfolding world communist revolution and pushes back. Thanks for liking the show, share the show, subscribe to EpokhTV. Well, it's great news that Kevin McCarthy, the new Republican Speaker of the House, has carried through his promise and removed Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell from the House Intelligence Committee. The scandal is that either of them were ever on it. Eric Swalwell was deeply compromised by Christine Fong, the Chinese spy.
I think it's unpatriotic, and yes, I think it's corrupt.
Adam Schiff, although he was condemning President Trump incessantly over Russia, has a long history of involvement with the Committee of 100, one of Communist China's biggest influence operations in the United States. This was a man throwing stones, absolutely. Now, Kevin McCarthy says he's removing these two people because the Intelligence Committee is about national security, and these people are not trustworthy enough to serve on it. Well, that's absolutely true. But if national security is the criterion, I would say there's probably another 50 or 60 Democrats that should be removed. Now, I want to give my list to Kevin McCarthy of who else he should remove from committees. And this is just a preliminary list. I could go a lot more deeper than this. Now, talking of the Intelligence Committee, Jim Himes of Connecticut serves on that. He wrote his thesis at Harvard, I believe, on the Sandinista self-defense units. These were the civilian police force of the communist Sandinista revolution. And he was very much in favor of this. He was elected with the help of the Connecticut Communist Party and is very, very closely involved with a group called the Council for a Livable World, which was set up by a Soviet agent, Leo Szilard, about 60 years ago to elect congressmen and senators who would vote to destroy the United States military. You think that might be grounds for looking at Jim Himes?
We will now turn to the...
And then there's Andre Carson, also on the Intelligence Committee. He's from Indiana, open, devout Muslim, but he's heavily involved in several very radical Muslim groups. At a conference of ICNA, the Islamic Circle of North America, which has direct connections to Pakistani intelligence movements, this is what he said.
At this convention right now, we're having secret meetings that we're plotting to destroy this country. But I say to those who are here undercover, Allah will not allow you to stop us.
A couple of people on the Intelligence Committee, Joaquin Castro of Texas and Jason Crow of Colorado, are also heavily involved with a group called Common Defense.
We are a progressive veterans organization. A lot of these progressive policies, they are really very popular with the military.
Many of us are in the fight to move the country towards a progressive future.
Now, that's a very left-wing veterans group, and it makes a lot of submissions on the US military. It's always trying to get the US military cut. Now, Common Defense, the chairman of the board of Common Defense is Judith LeBlanc of the Communist Party USA, one of the top communists in the country. Her second in command is Jonathan Smucker of Democratic Socialists of America. So this is a Marxist-run organization, and both Jason Crow and Joaquin Castro are involved with it. Now, armed services. Now, this is something to do with national security, I think you would agree, Speaker of the House. On that committee, you've got Joe Courtney of Connecticut. He is heavily involved with the Communist Party in Connecticut. Here he is with Joel Fishman, Edie Fishman, and Tom Connolly and Win Heimer, all leading members of the Connecticut Communist Party. We need to understand the Communist Party is loyal to China. And Joe Courtney chairs the submarine committee of the Armed Services Committee, and China is currently building submarines to counter the United States in the Pacific. So is it not a little bit of a worry that the head of the subcommittee of the Armed Services Committee is mingling with pro-Chinese communists? Could there be grounds for concern here? Now here's Mark Vasey from Texas, who also serves on the Armed Services Committee. Here he is with Gene Lantz, one of the leaders of the North Texas Communist Party. Lance and Mark Vasey are like this. They're buddies. They're bosom buddies. And Sylvia Garcia, also from Texas, she is very much involved with a group called the Texas Organizing Project. It used to be called Texas Acorn, and that's led by communists like Bernard Sampson and Reverend James Caldwell. You heard me right. Reverend James Caldwell is a member of the Houston Communist Party. Now, I mentioned Common Defense before, the left-wing veterans group headed by a leading member of the Communist Party, Judith LeBlanc. Well, members of the Armed Services Committee who are involved in Common Defense, all Democrats, are Ruben Gallego of Arizona, who's now standing for U.S. Senate, Seth Moulton of Massachusetts, Ro Khanna of California, Jason Crow, again of Colorado, Veronica Escobar of El Paso, Texas, Sarah Jacobs of California. They're all involved with Common Defense, an organization run by communists aimed to weaken the U.S. military, and they are on the Armed Services Committee right now. So Homeland Security, Speaker McCarthy, is Homeland Security to do with national security? I would think so. Well, the head of the Homeland Security Committee, when the Democrats are in power, now the ranking member, I believe, is Benny Thompson of Mississippi. Now, he used to support the Republic of New Africa back in the 70s.
Fairly and given every opportunity afforded them by law. This was not done in the case of the Republic of New Africa. They are charged with obstructing justice. This, I believe, is an attempt on part of law enforcement officials to stop the Republic from building its community. My position is that people are entitled to live as they choose, so long as they are law-abiding and peaceful.
That was a black power type of group that actually killed policemen. And he defended this group. He was heavily involved in the forerunners of Democratic Socialists of America and also the Communist Party USA. In 2000, Benny Thompson went to communist Cuba and had a meeting with the communist dictator Fidel Castro. Out of that meeting, Castro agreed to set up scholarships which have now trained about 150 young Americans in free medical scholarships in Cuba, with all the indoctrination that goes with it. Many of these young kids are the sons and daughters of American Communist Party members. And now those young people are all over America stirring up revolution.
The other was a novel idea raised by the president of Cuba to assist in the training of medical students in Cuba to come back and work in my congressional district.
Benny Thompson should be investigated by the Department of Homeland Security, not serving on the Homeland Security Committee. You've also got Sheila Jackson Lee, who serves on the Homeland Security Committee of Texas. Now, she's very heavily involved in the Muslim Public Affairs Council. That's a very left-wing Muslim body, very radical, and so radical they have a member of the South African Communist Party on their advisory board. Now, they have a program of putting interns into the offices of left-wing Congress members. They've put about well over 100 in the last few years, 6 of them in Sheila Jackson Lee's office. She's had 6 of these hard left interns. Many of them are involved in CARE, many of them are involved in Students for Justice for Palestine, a communist group, and many involved in the Muslim Student Association, which is a radical feeder group for other radical left-wing Islamic groups. Now, Eric Swalwell is on this committee as well, the Homeland Security Committee. So if he's not fit for intelligence, I think it's fair to say he's not fit for Homeland Security either. Is that a fair comment, Speaker McCarthy? Now, the Natural Resources Committee, that's a lot of strategic implications with this committee because it oversees mining, energy extraction, all of this kind of thing, you know. And if you're going to fight a war, you need to be able to mine minerals and you need to have control of your energy supplies and that sort of thing. Now, the former chairman of that, who still serves on that committee, Raul Grijalva of Arizona, used to write for the Communist Party newspaper. He's been to meetings sponsored by the Communist Party Training School in Tucson, the Salt of the Earth Labor College. And guess what? He's also involved with Common Defense, the left-wing veterans group that is headed by a leader of the Communist Party USA, Judith LeBlanc, who, by the way, campaigned for Raul Grijalva in Arizona in 2010. Judith LeBlanc, by the way, also mounted a campaign, Deb for Interior. She got movie stars involved. She had campaign buses, everything, to get Deb Haaland, a second-term congresswoman from New Mexico, appointed as Secretary of the Interior, who now oversees 20% of the United States. And Deb Haaland works very closely. They have a partnership with Raul Grijalva on the Natural Resources Committee. You know, they have a mutual friend, Judith LeBlanc of the Communist Party USA. On the Education Committee that oversees the education of your children, I think that has to do with national security too, actually. On that committee, you've got Raul Grijalva and Courtney. Both of those should be removed for their deep connections to the Communist Party USA. You've also got Mark Takano of California, who has deep connections to the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE. Now, that CARE used to work with the FBI, but now it doesn't, because the FBI got rid of that relationship because CARE was proven to be heavily involved in supporting terrorists. CARE is directly descended from Hamas, the famous Palestinian terrorist group. Ilhan Omar is on the Education Committee. Do you want her educating your kid? She is a radical Marxist, a radical anti-American activist, but she's on the Education Committee. You got Jamal Bowman of New York, who is actually a card-carrying member of a Marxist organization, Democratic Socialists of America. Should he be having a say in the education of your children? You've got Jahana Hayes. She's a former school teacher, congresswoman from Connecticut, also heavily involved with the Communist Party. You've also got Joaquin Castro and Mark Pocan. All of them are also tied to Common Defense, the organization I keep talking about that is run by Judith LeBlanc of the Communist Party USA. Judith is getting a lot of publicity in this show, but she is everywhere, folks. Now, the Justice Committee, the Judiciary Committee, this is the most powerful committee in the US Congress. This committee oversees the FBI and the Justice Department. Both of these departments were weaponized against the Trump administration. The Judiciary Committee is extremely important. Now, on that committee, you've got Ted Lieu of California, who is also deeply in bed with the Council on American Islamic Relations, a far-left radical Muslim group. They are more communist than they are Muslim, in my opinion. Another person who serves on the Justice Judiciary Committee is Jamie Raskin. He is very heavily involved with the Institute for Policy Studies, a far-left think tank based out of Washington, D.C. His father actually founded it. Now, Marcus Raskin, when he ran the Institute of Policy Studies in the 80s, there were books written about it exposing the extensive KGB ties to the IPS. Now they work more with the Cubans. They have several communists on their staff, but Jamie Raskin is a big part of the Institute for Policy Studies. He's also written for Democratic Left, the news magazine of Democratic Socialists of America, which actually holds meetings in the Washington office of Institute for Policy Studies. But the number one, the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, the man who was the chairman, the man who tried to impeach President Trump twice, that's Jerry Nadler of New York. Now, Jerry Nadler of New York, for many years, was a card-carrying Marxist, a member of Democratic Socialists of America. He's still supporting some of their causes to this day. Clinton was in power in the last days of the Clinton presidency. Jerry Nadler worked to get a woman freed from jail. A woman called Susan Rosenberg. She was serving a 40-year sentence for possession of explosives and being an accessory to terrorism. She was involved in a robbery where 3 people were killed. But Jerry Nadler got her out of jail. Now she serves on the board of the fundraising wing of Black Lives Matter. When all those FBI agents were out there supposedly tracking down the Chinese-inspired Black Lives Matter activists who are wreaking havoc in America, they were going after the friends of their boss. Now, do you think that might have put a bit of a damper on the FBI's enthusiasm? Now, the previous head of the Judiciary Committee was a man called John Conyers from Michigan. And guess what? He was also a card-carrying member of Democratic Socialists of America. He was a Marxist too. Fancy that. What a coincidence. So, Speaker McCarthy, I hope you will review all of your committees, because every committee in the Congress in some way or another has connections to national security. Education does. The Judiciary Committee does. The Natural Resources Committee does. The Labor Committee, every single committee has impact on the national security of this country. And as I've said before, there's about 100 Democrats in the House who couldn't pass any form of background check to drive a school bus or sell you stamps at the post office, but they're still serving on these committees in Congress, and they're trashing the Constitution and betraying America's secrets on a regular basis. So I applaud the removal of Eric Swalwell, or applaud the movement of Adam Schiff. Absolutely, well done. But I think there's a whole bunch more that need to be looked at, and I hope Speaker McCarthy will do this and his colleagues in Congress will start investigating the radical left, not just on the streets of America, not in China, but right here in the US Congress, because that's the most dangerous element of the left in this country. So thanks so much for watching Counterpunch. Please subscribe to the show. Go to my website, trevorloudon.com, get my books, educate yourself. We've got a world to take back, and we've got to start with education, and that's got to lead to action. So God bless America, and God bless everyone who loves liberty. Thank you so much.